So here we are again with another police shooting of a black man, and this one is here in Wisconsin. Now, there's a lot of controversy over this. This just happened last night, and people are already taking to the streets protesting, rioting, and, crying out that police violence is at an all-time high, and this man was unjustly killed. But there is a lot of stuff being said and a lot of accusations being made with literally based off like a 20 to 30 second video clip that we have. And I don't think people are asking all the right questions and people are looking into this in the correct manner. They are reacting on emotion and just upset in the heat of things. So let's go ahead and dive in and I'll show you what I mean. Sorry for the editing here, guys, but YouTube has taken down the initial video because the video portrayed in this part was too violent, so I am going to describe to you what happened, and that works for you audio listeners anyway. But essentially what we have with the Jacob Blake killing is he is here, and the video starts with him being held at gunpoint by the officers, and they're telling him to stop, don't move. He continues to walk, and he goes around his vehicle to the driver's side door while they follow him with their firearms raised. He then opens the door and leans into the car. We can't really see what he's doing. We just know that he's leaning into the car. Then the officers proceed to yell something and shoot into his back and severely injure him. So that is what we have in the video clip that I apparently am not allowed to show. But back to the video. With that, people's response has been what you would probably expect. They are upset that the police have shot this man who was just supposedly getting into his car. I'll read you the news report now, and we can take a deeper look into this. A man identified as Jacob Blake was in serious condition at Milwaukee Area Hospital after he was shot when officers were sent to the 2800 block of 40th Street late Sunday afternoon for what police called a domestic incident. More than 60 people were gathered following the shooting at the scene, with several saying that the black man, I guess they're indicating Jacob Blake here, was trying to break up a verbal altercation between two women. This was shortly after 5 p.m. According to a police department press release, Kenosha police were sent to the incident at 5:11 and were subsequently involved in an officer-involved shooting. According to the release, officers provided immediate aid to the man who was transported via Flight for Life to the hospital. The man was in serious condition. Police radioed. Traffic indicated that a landing zone was established. Okay. The incident was being turned over to the Washington Department of Justice. They'll be investigating the shooting. Here's what the witnesses said. At least half a dozen witnesses said the man had tried to break up a fight between the two women outside a home at 2805 40th Street, and that the police had attempted to use a taser on the man prior to the shooting. Then they heard at least 7 gunshots ring out. Witnesses said he was unarmed and shot in the back. A video has gone viral on social media showing this. While the man is entering the vehicle, shows an officer firing a gun at the man inside the vehicle, and a woman is screaming at him being shot. So, people saying it's tragedy, this is sad. An hour later, members of Black Lives Matter movement in Kenosha, along with representatives, arrived to protest the shooting, and it takes off from there. So that is the story of what has been going on here. Now, some very important things to go over. So, people are going to this and claiming, one, why would the officers, try to get this guy and arrest this guy? He was just breaking up a domestic dispute and whatnot, and there was no reason for them to try to arrest him in the first place. It's their fault for that. Also, he was just trying to get in his car and they shot him. It's their fault for that. And, of course, blaming the officers for everything. Now, the officers could be completely in the wrong here with the shooting. That is entirely one possibility. But you have to weigh all the possibilities and you have to consider everything. That's why an investigation needs to be conducted. Jumping to a conclusion based off a 30-second video you saw, and if that leads you to going and burning down car dealerships like we've seen here in Kenosha and setting fires and rioting and looting and attacking people, if you can be led to that off a 30-second video, you're not critically thinking about the situation and you're not caring to get all the facts about the situation. So I want to look into a few more things that present to us, more information. So we've obviously heard this one side. I want to show you some more information that might help here. So first off, there was a warrant out for Jacob Blake. And this, I think this was in, this is from August 24th here. This is the State of Wisconsin versus Jacob Blake, Kenosha County case number 120 CF 000736. So what was he charged with? One count of, let's see, criminal trespass to dwelling and domestic abuse. So this one right here, third-degree sexual assault, which is a felony. To give you an idea of what third-degree sexual assault is, it is sexual intercourse with a person without consent of that person, or sexual contact with the intention of penile ejaculation with a person without consent of that person. So yes, there was a warrant out for Jacob Blake on that. So one thing that needs to be asked was, were these officers here to just arrest this man who was breaking up a dispute, or did they know there was this warrant out for him? Did they know who this guy was? Is that why they were taking him in? If that is so, it is important to also note the history with this man. And a lot of times people get upset when you bring up one of these victims of these shootings, if you bring up their criminal history. I'm not bringing it up to say he was a bad guy. I think there's something very important in this criminal history that would explain the officer's behavior if they knew this history. Like I said, it's very important to know if they knew who this man was, they knew there was a warrant out for him, and they knew his history. I don't know what they knew, but in case they did, this might explain something. So this is a while back here, 2015 it looks like. And there was a criminal complaint that Jacob Blake, the man who was shot, and two women were at a tavern, and he got into an argument where he pulled a gun and then was asked to leave, and he left. So the police were, told about this, so they track him down in an SUV. Now, here's the interesting part. So this is in regards to Jacob Blake. Believing the driver was armed, police conducted a high-risk traffic stop. The complaint reads, and ordered Blake to put his hands out the window of the vehicle. Instead, Blake exited the SUV and started walking towards the officers and ignored the commands to get down on the ground. Officers forced Blake to the ground and ordered him to put his hands behind his back. When he refused to comply, the canine dozer was deployed to force the defendant into compliance. So, I think that's very interesting. It sounds very familiar, right? At least with regards to the video. He did something very similar here. The officers are giving him, instructions and telling him he's ignoring them. He's walking around his car. He's going to get something out of the car and completely ignoring commands. This part is also very interesting. While police were at the hospital with Blake so he could be treated for the wound from the dog, officers say he refused to answer questions but submitted to a legal blood draw. At the time he was taken into custody, Blake was searched, and they say he had a holster on his hip but no gun. So, a subsequent search of his SUV turned up a black handgun on the floor behind the driver's seat. A box of ammo was also found, and 2 loaded magazines were discovered in his coat. So, here's what I wanted to get at. If the officers, they knew there was a warrant out for him, and they knew about his, criminal record, at least to the extent of this type of scenario, they knew that this man had a history of being armed and threatening people with a gun. And this specific story where he kept the gun, what was it, under or on the floor behind the driver's seat, or kept it in his car? If this man is doing the exact same thing, last time he had the canine take him down, whatever, this guy is walking ahead of you, going into his driver's door, and we see in the video him lean into the car. Could have been a variety of things. Like I said, he could have just been climbing into his car and maybe he was going to drive away. I don't know. Maybe he wasn't doing anything at all. That is definitely one possibility. But you also have to consider this other possibility that he was going in there to reach for a gun. And if that is what the officers saw from their point of view down there, that is them acting in a split second decision to, protect the lives of everyone around them. And if you don't believe me, if you say, oh, that's ridiculous, they don't need to do that, there's no harm, he could have pulled the gun, then they could have shot him once they saw the gun. Okay, I want to show you another video of a very similar type of scenario where the officers don't actually succeed in stopping the guy before he reaches into his window in the driver door of his car. So let's watch this here. All right, here's another edit again. I'm sorry, guys. YouTube made me took down the videos because of the violent footage that was in it. So I'm going to again describe to you another scenario here. Now this is another encounter with police officers, separate incident altogether. But what you can see here is a man was pulled over for speeding. They did a sobriety test. They were going to arrest him and take him in. But he starts struggling and fighting against them. And they scuffle for like a minute and a half there. And he eventually breaks free, tries to get one of the officer's guns and fails. Actually makes it around to his driver's side door, reaches in, grabs the gun, and shoots one of the officers and tries to shoot the other, and then speeds away. So I just wanted to let you know that there are incidents out there like this where, a guy does dive into his driver's side door when the cops are trying to arrest him and, settle him down. And in that case, a police officer was shot and almost killed. So you do have these kinds of scenarios. But again, sorry for the edit, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We'll get back to the video. The officer did live, but he was in critical condition. But I wanted to show you that because that is a possibility of what can happen. And people in law enforcement know this is a possibility. A lot of people keep guns on them, and a lot of people are willing to use those if they feel they can get out of a situation. And I put all this information together to say that in this scenario, if the officers knew about this man, there was the warrant on him, you have all these things coming together. And that's evidence that there was a strong possibility that he could have been reaching for a gun to fire at those officers. And in another scenario where they don't shoot, maybe the officers could have been dead. And we probably wouldn't have a big news story on it or heard much about it. But nevertheless, this is what happened. This scenario. The man was shot, and he's not dead right now, but he was in critical condition, and there's no sense that or reason he should die at all. I mean, everybody should hope that he pulls through and is okay. We don't want people dying. But what bothers me is the reaction of people literally hours after this happened because of a very blurry, hard to hear 23-second video on what this guy did and what the officers did. And again, this is not me justifying one thing or the other. And people are going to jump on here and jump on other places with anyone that likes to point out any of the other options or possibilities that could have happened. Just because we want truth, people are going to hop on and call me and others, you're an absolute racist because you're not on board with, protesting what happened. If the officers are in the wrong here, absolutely, that's wrong. Something needs to be done. You need some type of reform. The officers need to be held accountable. But why can't people honestly, approach these type of incidents? Why does it have to be full-blown, these officers are racist, evil people that abuse their power? Another thing that needs to be looked into that I didn't have any information on is, maybe the history of these law enforcement officers. Is there a history of them going around using violence indiscriminately and killing people? I don't know. If it is, then that's something that also needs to be taken into account. You need to take into account a variety of factors. But as citizens who see this, we shouldn't break out into the streets, start burning things down off of just that little bit of information we have. So please, I don't even know who I'm talking to that would be able to, do anything here. It's just don't jump into these groups that have to fully condemn or fully exonerate either party here. And this literally just happened a night ago. The investigation's not going to be complete. You have to give it some time for the investigation to be completed. And I know in other circumstances, investigations have been taking a long time. that could be due, like with the Breonna Taylor situation. People are getting very upset that investigation is taking a very long time. And that is another thing worth looking into for sure. If you think an investigation is not being conducted properly, or you think they're taking too long, work on that issue. Start addressing that. Burning things down and, trying to twist a story to fit, a certain narrative because you need it to support your viewpoint doesn't help anyone. It just creates more division and more problems and more complications. So you have to take into account all these different things we talked about. Again, go through and look at these things. Look at the way the pieces line up. Like I said, if the investigation reveals that the officers knew all that information I just went over, there's very good reason for them to believe that maybe he was reaching for a gun. And even if they didn't know that, I don't know what their point of view was down there on the street, and I don't know what everybody else's point of view was down there on the street. Again, them not having body cams is kind of a sucky part of that situation because we don't get to see their point of view on what they saw. If we had one for that one officer that was pointing the gun at him, we might have been able to see, like him fumbling around for something, or maybe not. Maybe we would just seen him like trying to push himself into the car. I don't know. And we're not going to know if we don't have footage of that. But, conduct an investigation. I'm sure they searched the vehicle afterwards. Maybe we'll find out there was or wasn't a gun. Apparently there were other people in the vehicle. That is a traumatic experience for them. Yeah, it's not cut and dry. It's not straight up black and white. There's discrepancies in what happened, and it needs to be investigated, and we need to find out. And a person is not racist or evil or, a terrible person just because they want to know the truth of what happened. And for all the people out there that feel this need to attack someone because they ask a question or they want to know the truth, you're in the wrong in that scenario. You can virtue signal all you want, and you can get on there and say, I stand with so-and-so because of what happened, and that looks all well and good because you got a mob behind you that is all for that kind of thing. But there's a good amount of people out there that just want to know the truth and, would be behind whatever's the right course of action, right? If the officers are in the wrong, the officers are in the wrong. Work on police reform and dealing with that. If, the officers were justified in what they did and it looked like, their lives were in danger from what he was going to do, address that issue as well. But you got to know what happened before you break out into full-scale riots and destroy everything in your wake and just add fuel to the fire. But I don't think all of this, saying all of this or talking about any of this really matters, because even if it does come out later that, the guy was in the wrong and he was, let's say they find some sort of evidence that he was going to shoot all those officers there. It's not even going to matter because the movement's already been kicked up again. The dust has been stirred back up. With George Floyd, look, we had that initial tape. Everything broke out and the riots started, and they've been going nonstop, especially if you look at Portland. And, eventually more footage came out on George Floyd, more information from the report. And it looks like they may have amped the charges up too high and people pushed for too much there. And, we're accusing or making accusations that were, too far, pushing for first-degree murder and all of that based on, all the evidence we had there. So people don't really care about the truth, it doesn't seem like. It seems like they just care about getting whatever they're pushing for out in the open and getting some sort of support behind it based off an extremely emotional response that has nothing to do with the facts of the situation. But as long as it looks close enough, like it's passing, hey, we'll throw it out there and it'll support what we want. So that pretty much is all we have to say on the shooting of Jacob Blake right now, because again, it just happened and there is already so much speculation going on. but we will know more as time goes on and the investigation is completed. It very well, like I said, it could come out that these officers are completely in the wrong here and, justice needs to be served for them. It could come out that, they were just protecting themselves and trying to save their lives, or maybe something else altogether. I don't know what all the potential outcomes are, but it'll be interesting to see. With that, thank you all for tuning into this segment. Feel free to leave a like, subscribe, helps with the YouTube algorithm and get the videos out there. And other than that, you guys have a good one. We'll see you in the next one.